Hello students, welcome to another lecture. This time we shall read or rather complete William Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey, which we had to leave halfway. Before our classes got shut down, we had a couple of lectures on Tintern Abbey. And those of you who attended my lectures at the college probably remember that the poem was a last-minute addition to the path-breaking anthology Lyrical Ballads, which helped English Romantic poetry make its debut in 1798. The full title of the poem is rather long. It reads, "Lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey, on revisiting the banks of the Wye during a tour, July 13, 1798." This original title of the poem reveals the date of its composition and the occasion or context. Let me also remind you of some other relevant facts about our poet so that you can appreciate the text as well as the context. Wordsworth wrote his manuscript while sitting in the parlour of his publisher Joseph Cottle in Bristol. In our poet's own words, and I quote, "No poem of mine was composed under circumstances more pleasant for me to remember than this. I began it upon leaving Tintern, after crossing the Wye, and concluded it just as I was entering Bristol in the evening, after a ramble of 4 or 5 days with my sister. Not a line of it was altered, and not any part of it written down, till I reached Bristol." End of quotation. The Romantics used to be out on walking tours as a way of renewing their relationship with nature and knowing the familiar surroundings that started changing rapidly through enclosure and industrialization. In the summer of 1793, William Wordsworth had been on such a walking tour from London to North Wales. It was during this time he for the first time visited the Wye Valley and the dilapidated medieval monastery called Tintern Abbey. The river Wye forms the border between southwest England and Wales. The title of the poem reveals that Wordsworth revisits the same spot, that is the banks of the Wye, after 5 years. This time his beloved sister Dorothy is also travelling with him. The setting or the landscape has been depicted with its natural beauty and a nostalgic appeal, but it differs from the conventional 18th century landscape poem because the landscape and the poet's memory actually lead to a kind of self-reflection or mystical and philosophical ambition. Well, compared with Wordsworth's previous visit, the poet this time feels a change in his attitude to nature, a kind of spiritual growth or awakening. He identifies this as the mature phase of his mind's development, having passed through the first two stages, namely boyhood and early youth. Thus, the poem becomes a concise spiritual autobiography of the poet, and this spiritual autobiography, as we all know, takes a more ambitious form in his famous The Prelude. Well, Tintern Abbey is a quintessential poem of English Romanticism. It has 5 stanzas, and the poem thrives on the speakers, who is none other than our poet William Wordsworth, thoughts, feeling, memory, and introspection. The entire poem is characterized by a tone of meditation. Well, in the first stanza, the poem starts with a reference to his second visit after 5 years and how the poet feels reunited with the wild, secluded landscape. The second stanza talks about the inspiring memory of this landscape during his long absence of 5 years, as it had a soothing and rejuvenating effect upon his stressed mind. In the third stanza, he addresses the river Wye and once again affirms the power of nature to restore the tranquility of the soul amid the commotion and fever of the world. And the fourth stanza is probably the most important one. It records the development of the poet's mind. It's a kind of spiritual growth through 3 distinct stages. The final stanza is an impassioned address to Dorothy, his sister, who accompanies the poet in this visit. It This address actually tries to guide Dorothy, who is yet to develop a mystic vision of nature like her brother. Well, with this brief introduction in mind, let us approach the text. And before I upload the next parts of the lesson, I would request you to read the text yourself so that when I upload the next parts, you can follow those quite easily.